rest of your life. And if it doesn't make sense to the rest of your life, it has no meaning. Now, we'll go back to the experience of Jesus at baptism, which was a tremendously significant, not only emotional, but I think profoundly mystical experience, because in that experience, the narrow awareness of his own particular kind of consciousness was expanded. And the language that he uses in talking about it was language that many of his hearers could comprehend, could understand. He said, as you may remember, that to him the heavens opened and the Spirit of God took form, concretized itself as a dove. All the symbolism that's wrapped up in that. And the dove landed on his shoulder, which was a confirmation to him of the validity of the experience which he had. But this was not all. A voice spoke to him, using language to which he could correspond with understanding. And the voice said, "Thou art my son, my beloved. This day have I begotten thee," or "in thee I am well pleased," depending upon which one of the texts one uses. And immediately after that, he went away to a solitary place to do what? To work out the implications of the vision in terms of the life that he had to live. What does this say to me, about my life? So that from this moment on, everything that I do must take into account this radical invasion into the normal pattern of my life. And in order to do it, he had to dramatize his detachment by withdrawing, according to the account, withdrawing from the normal way that he's been living, becoming solitary, retreating, as we would say now. For what purpose? To see how this vision which he had would settle in and become a part of the landscape, the total landscape of his life. In other words, he had to ask himself, what does this experience mean, not in general, not to the Jewish people, not to the hierarchy of Jewish religion, but what does it mean to me in terms of how I will live the rest of my life? And you may recall from the account that he was alone 40 days, 40 nights. And what was he doing? Here again, he describes the experience in language that belonged to his world of particulars. So, he said, in talking about it, evidently to his disciples, to somebody, that Satan, that the devil, came to me to find out whether or not the experience which I had had was a valid one for me, and whether or not, and what would be involved in the subsequent behavior of my life in the light of the vision which I had. How can I be true to it and stay in the world functioning? What kind of life is laid upon me now as a result of this initial illuminating experience? And we have a phrase for it in Christian religion. He was tempted of the devil, and the devil presented 3 temptations to him, and I'm always fascinated by what subsequent generations do with this experience as they try to appropriate it to the stream of life in which they themselves are living and functioning. There is a rather famous painting of this in Chicago of Jesus being tempted of the devil. And the artist has an interesting point of view. Now that's Jesus. And the artist has surrounding his head many fingers, and you don't see them at first, but when you sit and contemplate the painting, you see that there are all of these fingers pulling at his mind. Trying to do what? Trying to see whether or not the experience which he had, the experience of illumination, is for him valid. Does it make sense? What kind of new demand must be made upon his life in order that he will do no violence to this vision which he had? And the first thing that happened, you may remember, is that he realized that he was hungry, which is a perfectly natural thing if you take it literally, that for 40 days he hadn't eaten. Of course, I can't imagine it, but that is what the record says, that for 40 days he hadn't eaten. And he was perhaps looking on the ground at the stones around, and to his amazement, some of these stones looked just like the kind of loaves of bread that his mother used to bake, and this set up a whole syndrome of things. He realized that he was hungry. And what is the bearing of my vision on the fact that the world is a practical place where men must eat if they are going to live. And in order to eat, they must work out some accommodation to the crud stuff of daily living. And this opened up, you see, at once a very fundamental question that is related to the quality and the kind of vision which he had. How important is bread to a man who is committed to following a vision? How important is it? And at once, you see, he opens up a very far-reaching, universal aspect of human experience. Men will often give up any liberty that they have, not only being true to something like a vision, but men will give up any liberty that they have if they are guaranteed bread. Do you remember in one of Tolstoy's stories, there was a man who owned the richest land in all the Russias. And he decided that he would give some of this land away, and he'd give it to any man who came and gave to him all the money that he had, of course. Then in exchange for that, he would give to the man all the land around which he could run from sunrise to sunset. And the hero in Tolstoy's story comes, and he'd always wanted rich land. He dreamed about it. And he gave the money that he had, and early in the morning he began running. And he hadn't been running very long, and he remembered that he was so excited about the possibility of getting this good land that he didn't want any breakfast. And now he needed the energy, but he didn't have it. But this is rich land, and he'd always wanted rich land. And so he kept running, and he became more and more tired and more exhausted, and his feet became like lead as he beat out a rhythm on this soil, rich land, rich land, rich land. He looked up at the sun was about to set and said, now I've got to put forth one more great effort. And he uncorked all of his spare adrenaline and began drawing on it with abiding enthusiasm. And finally he made it just as the sun was going down. And then he dropped dead. And they took him aside, Tolstoy says, and buried him in 6 feet. And that's all the rich land he could use. Now, the point is that the implication of the vision, and this is the thing to keep in mind, that the implication of the vision is always in terms of the private life of the person who sees the vision. This is the critical thing. And the private life has to be the, for instance, of the vision, or the vision disappears. Now, if a man feels that he has a mission in the world, as it is altogether possible and conceivable that so felt Jesus, that he has a mission in the world, then the bearing of the vision on his mission and how that mission can and will fulfill itself in the details of his life becomes the nature of the secondary crisis that follows from the primary vision. How can I deal with my own problem about food and shelter if I am to be true to the vision? Are there some things that I can't do to get bread without doing violence to the vision? How binding is it? Does there come a time, may there come a time in my life when I must make a choice between being true to the vision and getting bread? And here again, the way in which this whole struggle emerges in the consciousness of Jesus, he expressed it by saying that man must not live by bread alone. And this is very interesting to my kind of mind, because it does not say that man does not live by bread. It recognizes the importance of bread as bread. But it also recognizes that as important as bread is, it is not the most important thing in the world. I must therefore always be alerted to the fact that in my effort to live my life in the normal ways of survival, I am under a peculiar necessity, because of the vision that I've seen, to find a way by which I can honor the part of me to which the vision addresses itself, even at the expense of honoring the part of me that calls for bread. And it sounds, it may sound, well, I don't know how it sounds, but it is a profoundly significant insight that is at work here, as to push it in another way. All of you are young people, and you have not decided completely, altogether, what you're going to do with your lives. Each of you may have a great sense of mission that you are hiding and protecting, that no one knows anything about. But the time will come, even in the simplest ways, when you may have to make a choice between being true to your private insight as to value as to your insight into what is right or wrong as far as the way you live your life. And you will have to deal with the whole issue of compromises. And this is, how do I vote? If I do certain things, I can get this kind of job. But if I do, then as far as something else in me that's very important, I'll become a cripple. Now, am I willing to become a cripple in order that I might get this kind of job that does this and this and this and this? Because you may not have had the kind of, at this point, you may not have had the kind of dramatic vision about which we are talking in terms of the life of Jesus. But everyone has had his moment when certain things seem to you to be true for you. And then this is followed by a whole pattern of experiences in which you must make a choice between saying yes to this insight which you have or saying yes to this demand. There's a poet, his name, poet of the desert, Badger Clark, who lived in Arizona. He put this whole struggle in contemporary terms and a rather interesting thing about the Civil War, and this is what he says about it. If I can piece it together in my mind. My father prayed, this is the Civil War, my father prayed when he drew a bead on the gray coats back in those blazing years when the house was divided, the Civil War. Bless his old heart, there never was truer or kinder, yet my father prayed while hoping that the ball from his clumsy old musket might thud into the body of some hot-eyed young Southerner and tumble him limp, in the mud of the Vicksburg trenches. That was my father, praying and shooting, wholehearted, there's never a doubt. But what about me in my day of battle? Could I put my prayers behind a slim Springfield bullet? Hardly. Except to mutter, Jesus, you and I part company here. My country calls for my body and takes my soul also. Do you see those humans herded and driven against me? Turn away, Jesus, for I must kill them. Why? Such evils bring some vast, vague good to my country. I do not know, but today my business is killing, and my gods must be luck and the devil till this thing is over. Turn away, Jesus. Your eyes make me slack in my duty. My father could mix his prayers with his shooting, and he was a great, good man in his generation. But if I should pray like him, I'd spoil it by laughing. What is the matter? Now that brings the whole thing in sharp focus, not with all of the glow that comes from your having seen the heavens open and the Spirit descend upon your shoulders like a dove and hearing a voice say that I'm very pleased with you. But every human being has in his story a moment or moments when he gets a glimpse of his way to go. And then all of the demands of his life, projections that are placed upon his life by those who love him, ideals that belong to others that are transplanted into his mind. And all the time, what he's trying to do is to find out what is the word that has been spoken to him. This is the whole point that the mystic is always bothered about. If the vision could just vision, and period. But the vision is in a man. And the man has a life. And that life has many involvements and ramifications. And the question that he has to raise is, what bearing is the light that breaks in my mind, what bearing does that have on my particular journey? This is a problem. And how Jesus dealt with it, that man must not live by bread alone, that man must have bread. But the bias, the accent, the emphasis, the prejudice of his life must be on the side of the thing in him that gives him the feeling of being true to himself. Then there was the next form that this same problem took. If my vision is correct, if it is not correct, if my vision is authentic, if I have not been deluded, then it means that I'm very privileged, that everybody doesn't have this. And if I'm privileged, then it means that there are certain prerogatives that are mine in a peculiar way because I've had the vision. And because I've had the vision, this gives me immunity from a lot of things in which people are involved who haven't had the vision. And the form that this took in the imagination of people, bearing in mind, working out the implications of the mystic vision on the practical details of his life. That's the issue that we're dealing with. In his imagination, he was taken to the pinnacle of the temple, in his imagination. And he was told by the temple, now if your vision is really true, it's authentic, then you can jump down from the pinnacle of the temple, defying all natural law, and you won't get hurt. God will take care of you. God who gave you the vision will, how does he say it? He will give his angels charge concerning you, and they will just swoop down and bear you up on their wings, lest you dash your foot, not to speak of your head, against the stone. The real dilemma that is created by the experience of vision is the delusion that the things that apply to people who haven't had the vision do not apply to me. That life, because I've had the vision, life will make an exception in my case because I'm different. Now, I didn't ask to be different. It is a gratuity on the part of existence. I was going along attending to my business, and then I was plucked. Bingo. I'm not responsible. Do you remember who wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame? Ah, thank you. In Hugo's Notre Dame, you remember the priest? Yeah, that's right. The priest is standing up at a window overlooking the square in front of Notre Dame. There's the window, there's the priest. Now down here is the square. Now in the square, there's a gypsy girl dancing. And the priest is looking down at the square, and very slowly he becomes aware of the existence of this exotic creature dancing down there. And when he becomes aware of her, that word, when he becomes aware of her, at once he is thrown back to the genius of his vision and commitment. And what does he say? You remember his word? He says, if I may paraphrase him, he says, I've never seen anyone as beautiful as this gypsy girl, gypsy dancer. She is so beautiful that if she had been on earth and Jesus Christ was being born, he would have selected her for his mother. But that wasn't enough. He said she was so beautiful that the sight of her was more to be desired than the sight of God. And then he remembered his commitment. And then what happened? He becomes repentant, frightened, panicked. His whole spirit was thrown into confusion and utter chaos. And then he began to work his way out of his It isn't my fault. It's not fault at all. Because as long as God sent to me intimations, hints, manifestations of the devil in the form of various exorcisms, it's all right, I can stand it. But when God confronted me with the devil himself in the form of the gypsy dancer, I failed. I capitulated. And this is my fault, it's God's fault, because he did not make me and the devil equal in strength. That was the way he came out of it. Now what I'm saying is that the most subtle temptation that comes to the person who is aware of being visited by the vision is that he regards himself as in some way so separated from other men that he is not bound by the things that bind ordinary people who haven't had the vision. And you can apply it in 1,000 different ways. That there is always the element of mystery in the vision and in the visitation, that there's something enigmatic about it, something that is beyond the rational, that transcends logic. And if this is true, and it comes to me, then there's always an element in it that is without merit. There's a grace in it. It did not come to me because I'm a good man. It did not come to me because I'm brilliant. It didn't come to me because of my heritage and all the rest of the things that I could mention. Over and because the same things in terms of ability, equipment, genius, whatever resources that I may think of, there are a lot of people who have these, but they were not visited. I was. I was visited. So that the mystery then deepens. Why was I visited? I'm just an ordinary man. But I was visited. Well, I was visited because I try to decode the mystery. I was visited because God saw in me something he didn't see in the other people. And who am I to raise any question about the judgment and the wisdom of God? If God saw something in me that was so significant that he visited me with it, then I must be extraordinary. Not only extraordinary, but I must be unique. Not different, but unique. There's a mystique in me that calls for the great creative mystique in the universe. And it landed in me in response to this nucleus, this mystique nucleus, which is germane to the way I am put together. And this makes me different and unique. And therefore, because it does, I'm not bound by the ordinary things that bind ordinary people who have not been so blessed. So I can do as I please. Now, this is the form that it took in the mind of Jesus after the vision. And I suppose what, if we may rationalize it in a kind of paraphrase, this would be that the tempter said to him in his mind that the world is not orderly, that there really is no logic in life, no antecedent in consequence, no reaping and so on. There's a way by which this syndrome can be defeated if you have the gift. If you have the gift. You need not be bound by antecedent and consequence. You need not be bound by reaping and sowing. The whole structure of dependability in the nature of the world and the nature of existence breaks down in the presence of your confrontation. So you can do it. Now this is what the temple is. And the reply of Jesus is very interesting. If we paraphrase it again, what he said was, if I go up to the pinnacle of the temple and jump down, the possibilities are I'll break my neck. Son of God to the contrary notwithstanding, vision to the contrary notwithstanding, because there is a logic, there's a profound logic in existence. And this logic is binding upon all forms of life, including human form. And at no point in time is any expression of life privileged to step out of the pattern of the rhythm and act as if the logic of life did not exist. So the question then becomes, how must I relate to the natural order in which I must work out my life, in the light of the fact that there was a moment when it seemed as if I was lifted out of that order in a unique moment of awareness and vision. And then I dropped back into it. And I must work out the pattern of my life just as if this had not happened. And yet, because it happened, it informs everything that I do in my effort to work it out. This is the problem, and this is the issue. Always. Now, to leave that, because I don't want to spend too much time there. How did he manage in living the rest of his days in the light of the setting, the settling of a way of living which was clear to him after this struggle that came shortly on the heels of